You ever stand in your garden in the middle of August, looking at beds that are done producing and just feel a little sad about it? Like the season's over and there's nothing left to do but wait for spring? I want you to picture something with me for a second. It's late August. Your tomato plants are leggy and tired. The lettuce you planted back in April bolted weeks ago and turned bitter. You've got maybe $40 of seed packets sitting in a drawer and you figure they're done for the year. So you toss them in a box, tell yourself next spring, and start thinking about raking leaves instead. Here's the thing, that drawer full of seeds, a good chunk of them are exactly what you should be planting right now, not next spring, right now in August. Most people lose out on 6 to 8 extra weeks of harvest every single year because nobody ever told them August was a planting month, not just a harvesting month. That's real food. That's real money. That's a stretch of the year where your garden could still be feeding you, and instead, it's sitting empty under a layer of weeds. Think about what that actually costs a family over the years. 6 or 8 weeks of fresh vegetables, every single season just left on the table. That's dozens of meals you paid grocery store prices for when your own dirt could have grown them for the price of a seed packet. A bag of grocery store carrots and a bundle of kale can run you $8 or $10 some weeks, and that's before you even get to beans or spinach. Multiply that out across 2 months of missed harvest every single year, and it's not pocket change anymore. It's real money quietly slipping past, season after season, while the ground that could have grown it all just sits there under a layer of weeds and old mulch. And it's not only money, it's the taste of a fall carrot you'll never know, and the quiet satisfaction of walking outside in October and cutting your own supper instead of driving to buy it. And here's what I want you to hear clearly. That's not because you did anything wrong. It's not because you don't know gardening. It's because this piece of knowledge quietly disappeared somewhere along the way. Nobody handed it down to you, so you couldn't have known it. This isn't a failure on your part. It's a gap. And gaps can be filled back in. I remember the exact moment this clicked for me, watching how many folks around here treat August like the finish line instead of a checkpoint. A neighbor of mine, a fellow a few years younger than me, spent all spring and summer babying a garden he was real proud of. By the middle of August, he'd pulled the last of his squash, tilled the whole thing under, and put a tarp over it so the weeds don't take hold before spring. 6 weeks of growing time just tarped over and wasted because nobody ever told him there was anything else to do with that ground once summer crops finished up. That's the kind of thing that happens quietly, all across the country, every single year. My name's Delia, and I've been gardening this same patch of ground my whole life. I learned it from my grandmother, who learned it from hers, back when a family's garden had to carry them clean through the winter, not just look pretty in July. Nobody in my family ever had the luxury of an empty garden bed in August. That was 6 extra weeks of food, and you didn't waste it. I still keep her seed tin, an old tobacco tin with a bent lid, and I still use her rule of thumb for frost timing before I trust any app or almanac on my phone. So today I'm going to walk you through 6 vegetables my family always planted in August, right when everyone else was giving up on the season. I'll show you exactly how to plant each one, how to know it's working, what mistake trips up almost everybody who tries this for the first time, and how to tell if a crop's worth your effort in your particular corner of the map. And before we get into it, I did put together a simple printable planting calendar that lines all this up against your frost date, totally optional. I'll mention it once, and that's it. Let's get into the list. Number 1, spinach. Spinach hates hot weather. That's the first thing to understand. In the spring, it bolts, meaning it shoots up a flower stalk and turns bitter the second the weather warms up. But plant it in late August and it grows into the cooling weather instead of away from it, which flips the whole equation in your favor. Here's how you do it. Scatter the seeds about 1/2 inch deep, water them in well, and keep the soil from drying out for the first week while they sprout. If your August is still running hot where you live, a little afternoon shade over the bed for those first few days can make a real difference. A scrap of old bedsheet propped up on sticks works just fine. You don't need anything fancy. The reason this works is simple. Spinach seeds actually germinate better in cooler soil than warm soil, which is backwards from most vegetables. And a light frost later on doesn't hurt the plant at all. It actually makes the leaves sweeter, because the plant pulls sugars up into its leaves as a kind of natural antifreeze, protecting its own cells from the cold. That's not a trick. That's just how the plant survives, and it happens to taste wonderful. Do this one. It's about as forgiving as a vegetable gets, and it's a good one to start with if you've never tried a fall planting before. Skip it only if you live somewhere that barely cools off at all by October, since spinach really does want that chill to do its best work. The most common mistake I see with fall spinach is folks planting it too shallow and letting the top layer of soil bake dry in the afternoon sun before it ever gets a chance to sprout. A seed that dries out halfway through germinating just dies where it sits. So don't be shy with that first inch of soil. Keep it damp like a wrung-out sponge, not soaking wet, just consistently damp for that whole first week to 10 days. Number 2, bush beans. Now this one surprises people because they think of beans as a summer crop only. But a fast bush bean variety planted in early August can still put out a full crop before your first frost, as long as you count backward from your frost date and give it enough time. Here's how you check it. Look at the seed packet for days to maturity. That number tells you how many days the plant needs from the day you plant the seed to the day you can pick your first bean. Count that many days forward from your planting date. If that lands at least a week before your average first frost, you're in good shape. If it lands right on top of your frost date or after it, that variety's cutting it too close and you'd be better off with a quicker one. Plant the seeds about an inch deep, a few inches apart, in a spot that still gets good sun through the day. Beans like warmth in the soil to sprout, and August still gives you plenty of that, even as the days start shortening. The reason beans work so well this late is that they grow fast and they don't mind the shorter days nearly as much as people assume. What they actually care about is soil temperature at planting time and a good stretch of warm days after that to bulk up and flower. Give them that and they'll race to the finish line ahead of the frost. Do this one if your seed packet math works out with a week or more to spare. Skip it or switch to a faster variety. If the math is too tight for comfort, there's no shame in swapping crops when the calendar doesn't cooperate. If you're not sure which variety to grab, look for words like quick or early right on the packet, or a days to maturity number in the low 50s. Those are the ones bred to hurry, and August is exactly when that speed pays off. One more thing worth knowing, beans planted this late sometimes skip the pest pressure that hits a spring crop, since a lot of the bugs that bother beans have already moved on or died back by the time these seedlings come up. That's a small silver lining that comes free with a later planting date. One more thing on beans, since this trips people up. Don't soak the seed before planting like some folks do with peas. Bean seed can actually crack and rot if it soaks up too much water too fast before it's in the ground. Just plant it dry, straight from the packet, and water the row in well right after. That's all it needs. Number 3, carrots. Carrots planted in August are, in my opinion, some of the best tasting carrots you'll grow all year. And here's why that happens, because it's worth understanding, not just taking my word for it. Cold soil signals the carrot plant to store more sugar in its roots, kind of like the plant's own version of packing a lunch to get through winter. The plant is protecting itself from freezing by loading its roots with extra sugar, which lowers the freezing point of its own cells. A bit like how salt keeps water from freezing as easily. That sugar is exactly what makes a fall carrot taste noticeably sweeter than a summer one, and it's not something you can fake by growing the same carrot in July. To plant them, loosen your soil good and deep first, since carrots grow straight down and hate hitting anything hard, like a rock or a clump of packed clay, which will make the root twist or fork instead of growing straight. Scatter the seeds thin, cover them lightly, about a 1/4 inch, and keep that top layer of soil damp every single day until they sprout, which can take a couple weeks. Carrot seed is slow and a little stubborn about germinating, so don't panic if you don't see anything for the first 10 days or so. Do this one if you've got any decent soil depth at all, even in a raised bed or a deep container. Skip it only if your soil's mostly hard clay you haven't worked loose yet, since the roots simply won't have anywhere good to grow. My grandmother used to say a carrot planted in August was worth waiting on, and she wasn't exaggerating. The mistake most beginners make is giving up on carrot seed too early, because it really can take 2 to 3 weeks to see the first thread-thin sprouts poke up, and a lot of people assume nothing's happening and just quit watering. Mark the row with a stick or a stone so you remember where you planted, and keep after it even when the bed looks empty. The payoff, come late fall, is worth every day of that patience. Number 4, kale. If spinach is forgiving, kale is nearly bulletproof. Kale actually improves with a frost or two, which is the opposite of what most people expect from a vegetable in cold weather. Here's the plain reason why. The cold triggers the plant to convert some of its stored starches into sugars, and that changes the flavor from slightly bitter to noticeably sweeter and milder, the same basic trick the carrot and the spinach are doing, just showing up in a different part of the plant. Kale in July can taste a little tough and a little bitter. That same plant, picked after a frost in October, tastes like a completely different vegetable. Plant kale seeds about a ½ inch deep. Give the seedlings some room once they come up, 6 inches or more between plants, and keep them watered while the weather's still warm and the soil's still drying out fast in the sun. Here's a little bonus for you. This is actually the midpoint of our list. So if you're just tuning in for the practical steps, we're 3 vegetables in with 3 to go, and this next one's an easy one for beginners. Kale, once it's established, will often survive light snow sitting right on the leaves without any damage at all. That's how tough this plant is once it gets a good start. Do this one, especially if you've never grown greens before and want something hard to mess up. It really does forgive a lot of beginner mistakes. A curly leaf variety is the easiest one to start with, since it's a little more forgiving of uneven watering than some of the flatter leaf types. And once you've got a frost-touched batch ready to pick, don't overthink what to do with it. A simple pan of kale wilted down with a little bacon grease or butter is about as close to what my family always made as you'll find. No recipe card required. Number 5, radishes. Radishes are the fastest thing on this list, and honestly, they're a great one to plant with kids because you'll see results in 3 to 4 weeks, which is fast enough that a child won't lose interest waiting. Push the seeds about ½ inch into loose soil, 1 inch or 2 apart, and keep the bed evenly moist the whole way through, since radishes that dry out and then get watered heavily tend to crack. What makes radishes such a good August crop is simply speed. Their whole life cycle, from seed in the ground to a radish on your plate, is short enough that they beat the frost with plenty of room to spare, even if you plant them a little later in the month than the other crops on this list. You could plant radishes right up through early September in a lot of places and still get a full crop before things turn cold. Do this one if you want something fast and satisfying, especially if the rest of this list feels like a bigger commitment than you're ready for right now. The only mistake to skip is planting them too thick and forgetting to thin the seedlings, which gives you a bed of leafy green tops on top and tiny, disappointing little roots underneath, because the plants are all fighting each other for space. Because they're so fast, radishes are also a good crop to plant in batches. A small row every week or so through late August and into early September. That way you're not stuck with 20 radishes ready all at once, and you've always got a fresh little harvest coming along behind the last one. Number 6, turnips. Turnips are the old-timer's secret weapon, and honestly, most people today have never planted one on purpose in their whole life. You get 2 harvests out of 1 planting, which is something almost nothing else on this list can claim. You've got the leafy greens on top, which you can pick and eat like any other cooking green, sautéed or added to soup, same as you'd use kale or spinach. And you've got the root underneath, which sweetens up in the cold just like a carrot does, for the exact same reason: stored sugar, protecting the plant from freezing. Plant the seeds about a ½ inch deep, water them in, and thin the seedlings once they're a couple inches tall so the roots have room to bulk up underground without crowding each other out. The reason turnips handle a late planting so well is that both the greens and the roots tolerate frost without any trouble, so you're not racing the calendar nearly as hard as you are with something more delicate. You can plant them a little later than you'd plant carrots and still come out fine. Do this one if you want the most food for the least fuss out of a single planting. It's the kind of vegetable that used to feed a whole family through a lean winter, and it can still do that job today. My grandmother kept a little patch of turnips in the back corner of her garden every single year, and it was never the prettiest part of the plot, but it was the part that kept us fed longest into winter. Turnip roots store well in a cool, dark spot for weeks after you pull them, which is exactly why old farm families leaned on this one so heavily. It wasn't just a fall vegetable to them. It was a way to stretch food supply clean into the cold months without a single jar or freezer bag involved. Now here's something I think about a lot. My grandmother never had to explain any of this to anybody. Every family on that road knew it, because everybody's garden had to stretch through the winter, not just through the summer picnic months. There wasn't a store nearby stocked full of fresh produce 12 months a year, so nobody had the option of letting a garden bed sit empty in August. That knowledge wasn't special back then. It was just common sense, passed down without anybody thinking twice about it. It seems to me that once most people stopped growing their own food and started counting on the grocery store to have everything in every season, all this knowledge about timing and frost and second harvest just had nowhere left to live. Nobody wrote it down because nobody thought they'd need to write down something everybody already knew. Think about how knowledge like this actually used to travel. It moved from a mother to a daughter standing side by side in a garden row, or a grandfather showing a grandson exactly how deep to push a seed with his thumb. It wasn't in a book. It didn't need to be because it got repeated out loud in the dirt every single year to somebody who was going to need it themselves someday. Once that chain breaks, even for just one generation, it doesn't automatically pick back up. The garden might still get planted every spring, but that second season, that August planting, is the first thing to quietly disappear because it was never the flashy part. Nobody bragged about their fall turnips at a summer cookout. I could be wrong about exactly how it happened, and I'm sure a dozen things played a part: bigger farms, cheaper transportation, a grocery store on every corner stocked full in every season. But that's how it looks to me, watching how few people even know August is a planting month at all anymore. It's not that anybody hid this from you on purpose. Nobody was trying to keep a secret. It just slowly stopped getting passed along, the same way any old habit fades out once it's not needed to survive. And that's exactly why I make these videos, not to blame anybody for not knowing, but to hand this back to whoever wants it. So let's bring it all back together, because that was a lot to take in. And if you skipped ahead, I want you to still walk away with everything you need. Spinach and kale get sweeter with the cold. So don't be afraid of frost for these two. It's actually a good sign, not a threat. Both of them convert stored starches into sugar once the temperature drops. And that's what turns a so-so green into something genuinely sweet and mild. Bush beans and radishes are about speed. Count your days to maturity against your frost date, and if the math works, you're good to go. Radishes are fast enough you can even plant them in small batches every week or two right through early September, so you've always got a fresh little harvest coming. Carrots and turnips reward a little patience with some of the best flavor you'll get out of your whole garden year. Both of them load up on sugar as protection against the cold, and both of them store well after harvest, which means they're not just a fall treat. They're a way of keeping food on hand well past the growing season. Turnips go a step further, giving you 2 harvests, greens and roots both, for the effort of one single planting. 6 vegetables, 6 different reasons each one earns its spot on this list. And every single one of them can go in the ground this month without any special tools, any greenhouse, or any experience beyond what we just walked through together. Here's something worth doing this week while it's still fresh in your mind. Go find your average first frost date for your area. A quick search will tell you, or a call to your local extension office will too. And they're usually happy to talk your ear off about it if you ask. Write it down on a piece of paper. Tape it to the inside of a cabinet door if you have to. Somewhere you'll actually see it. Then count backward from that date for just one of these 6 vegetables. Pick the one you're most curious about, the one that sounded easiest or most interesting to you as you were watching, and get those seeds in the ground before the week's out. That's it. That's the whole assignment. Not the whole list, just one. You can always add more once that first bed's in the ground, and once you see how easy it actually is, I'd bet you plant more than just the one. A word of encouragement here, because I know some of you are watching this thinking you've already missed your window, or that your soil isn't good enough, or that you don't have the right setup for it. You don't need raised beds. You don't need a greenhouse. You don't need bags of fancy soil amendments. My grandmother grew every one of these 6 vegetables in plain dirt that had never seen a bag of anything from a store. What she had was timing, patience, and a willingness to try. That's the whole secret, and it's one you already have access to right now today. I'd love to know something in the comments. What's the one vegetable your own family always planted late in the season? The one nobody else around you seemed to bother with. Every region's got one, some crop that quietly kept a family fed while the neighbor's gardens sat empty. Maybe it's a variety with a name I've never even heard, passed down in your family and nowhere else. I want to hear yours, whatever corner of the country or the world you're gardening in. And picture this for a second. It's late October. There's frost on the ground in the morning, thin and white across the grass, the kind that melts off by 9 but tells you plain as day that winter's coming. And you're out there in your boots, pulling sweet carrots out of the dirt and cutting kale for supper, while everybody around you, including maybe that neighbor who told you gardening season was long over by now, packed their garden in weeks ago and are buying limp vegetables at the store. That's not luck. That's not some special gift for growing things that only certain people are born with. That's just knowing what August is actually for and doing something with it while everyone else has already given up on the year. If you want that printable planting calendar I mentioned, the one lining all 6 of these crops up against your own frost date, it's linked below, no pressure, just a tool if it helps you keep it all straight while you're getting started. Next time, I'm going to show you how to protect these fall crops from an early hard freeze using nothing but stuff you've probably already got lying around the house. No fancy row covers, no special equipment, just old sheets, buckets, and a little know-how about when to actually use them. I'll see you there.